So the reason I am excited to be here talking about this is because Intel India has had its own journey when it comes to ethics. Intel in India started in 1980s, late 80s, primarily as a sales operation. And it was in the early 1980s that we then expanded from sales into an engineering organization. Today, we are about 4,500 employees in India. 70% of the employees are focused on R&D. And today, we are a key R&D site for Intel. But in the 2005-2006 timeframe, we actually saw a spate of code of conduct issues in Intel India. And we had to take several actions, several very difficult and painful actions, to clean up the company, the part of the company that we have over here in India. And since then, ethics and code of conduct is something that is always front and center in our radar. In fact, in 2012, when I was interviewing for this particular position, every single executive who spoke to me felt the need to touch upon the importance of ethics and code of conduct, because what we had gone through in 2005-2006 was so painful that we did not want ever to have to retrace those steps. On a personal level, I spent my years growing up in India, and then I was in the US for some 30 plus years before returning to India in this position. And so I have given this topic actually a lot of thought in terms of what ethics means and what results in good ethics. And what I want to start by sharing with you Maslow's ladder that I'm sure several of you are already familiar with. More than anything else, I feel that this model resonates in terms of explaining how ethics evolves when it comes to countries, when it comes to societies, when it comes to individuals. And at the very root is the state, what it basically asserts, which is that economic prosperity is fundamental. Because once individuals have basic nutrition, shelter, and safety, it is only after that that they attempt to accomplish more. And so we go very quickly into the importance of economic prosperity and the importance of wealth creation. And when it comes to that, if we look at the world today, we see that in the last 2 decades, we have actually, as a world, made a lot of progress. Even India, as an emerging country, has seen its wealth rise by 211%. However, there is a lot left to do. This wealth creation that we see in the world still has 80% of adults with no wealth. And then going beyond that, this rising tide is not lifting all boats equally. We see a lot of inequality across the world, within countries and between countries. Now, why is inequality important? Why does it matter? in fact, you could argue, and people do, that some level of inequality, in fact, is good. It motivates competition. But the problem with inequality of the kind that we see, inequality that is fairly pervasive and very persistent, is well studied in this report by New Economics Foundation, where they basically make a case that, in fact, every aspect of life, every aspect of society, every aspect of the economy ends up getting corrupted by inequality. Because at best, inequality is demotivating. At worst, it is dangerously destabilizing. And so what is, actually, if you look at India itself, you see that it is a microcosm of this. In the last few years, as we saw, we've seen a lot of economic progress. And yet, as Mr. Shibulal described, it's a country of stark contradictions, persistent poverty, and inequality. And so in today's world, if you ask ourselves what is the right thing to do, I think it is quite obvious that we do want to focus on growth, because economic prosperity is fundamental to everything, but we want to make that growth inclusive. And the way in which we make this growth inclusive, we can come at it, and as a society and as a world, we have come at it in many different ways. We could redistribute wealth, and we've had lots of attempts across countries to try to do that. And it's fairly well established now that in its extreme form, communism has largely failed. We could continue with what we largely see in the world today, which is that the winner takes all. But even in the country that perhaps best epitomizes that, and that is the US, we see that it does not help with inclusive growth. And so we really have no choice but the middle ground, and I refer to that as leveling the playing field. And if you think about that as a strategy, it is a strategy that we are trying to apply today to essentially address the causes of minorities everywhere, whether it is a gender-based minority or it is social minority, as in the case of India when it comes to various castes. In general, the strategy is, how can we level the playing field? And so, if we look at that, and we think about that, there are many, many studies that have been done and that will be done. There are many thoughts out there in terms of how to do this. I want to focus on 4. The first is the role of technology. The second is the role of governance. The third is the importance of innovation. And the fourth is public-private partnership. So let me get right into it. So technology. Technology, more than any other phenomenon in our recent past, is a tremendous fuel because it creates this virtuous cycle that results in both economic and social development, and it can be a great equalizer. It lowers the cost of entry and the barriers to entry, no matter which economic sector you look at. It removes poverty by basically increasing transparency. It reduces and, in fact, can get rid of corruption, again, because of the unique way in which it can create transparency. And so, what do we need to do to take technology to the masses? Well, the government has a huge role to play over there through policies and funding, and the industry. Even companies like Intel have a role to play by coming up with technology that makes it easier for everyone to embrace. For example, we can have people who are functionally illiterate, but we could create ways in which they can interface with technology so that they can become digitally literate. If you look at the impact of internet, you see that it has been profound. In fact, for every 2.6 jobs, for every job that was lost due to efficiencies, 2.6 jobs have been created, which, actually addresses one of the main criticisms that people throw against technology, which is it results in job loss. But actually, if you study the data more carefully, it does not. If you look at GDP, what it took the Industrial Revolution 50 years, we've been able to achieve in 15 years. And technology does not help only large businesses. It has an equal, if not bigger, effect on small and medium-sized businesses. Let me share with you this data that I think is now very well known, the impact of broadband on GDP. And you see there's a very strong correlation between that. So the challenge that we have been talking about inside Intel and with the industry is, it took us 30 years to touch 1 billion people. Can we reach the next 6 billion in a decade? And if we were to do that, India would benefit directly because of the sheer numbers that we're seeing in India. Now let me go on and talk about governance. Governance is a lot in the news today, especially inside India, ethics and governance. What we find, and in fact, if you look at Maslow's ladder, it shows that governance and the environment of trust that creates is good for people and it's good for business. Because businesses do not like to invest in an environment where they do not feel they have a level of trust that will allow the growth to be sustainable. And what we're talking about is not just compliance to laws. I think what we've got to get to is commitment, where governance and code of conduct is a value. Even in Intel, India today, I don't think we are there yet. We have, as I said, a code of conduct that we do adhere to and we put a lot of attention on. But where we need to get to is having every single employee believe that they own the controls. That this is not something that they have to comply to, but this is something that they own and are committed to. We in Intel India have some distance to cover. It's something that we are focused on right now. In India, I think as a country and as a society, that's what we need to embrace. Globally, if you look at the happiness index and countries where ethics are important, we see a very interesting correlation. Let me now talk to my third key point, and that is innovation. Creating an environment of innovation is critical because innovation feeds a very basic need of human beings, and that is the need to be creative. Governments can play a huge role in making that environment. In India, the government can play a much larger role in creating an environment where it becomes easier to invest in startups. And the industry can play a very significant role by basically taking on entrepreneurship in social causes. We actually have in India some very interesting examples of people who've done a very nice job and continue to do a very nice job. And so what we want to see is more and more of that. We did some correlation of some data that is available, again, this time between GDP and innovation. And again, you see a pretty interesting correlation between the two. Innovation has huge scope. In India, we are seeing innovation of all flavors. Innovation that is unique to India, innovation of technologies that were invented in other countries and adapted to India, and innovation that was done in India and then exported to the rest of the world. And we also have the scope to do innovation essentially across all layers, whether it is in the hardware, software, services and solutions, or all the way to the business model. We today are seeing innovation across all of these different levels and at varying degrees of cost when it comes to things like R&D, scale, time to market. Business model innovation is where actually the world has seen some of the most interesting progress. And business model innovation is something that actually has tremendous potential in a country like India. That is where we can increase social causes and really get into social entrepreneurship. Finally, let me talk about public-private partnerships. Everything that we touched upon, whether it is technology or creating an environment of innovation or good governance, there's a role for the government to play in terms of policies, in terms of funding. There's a role for the industry to play because industry tends to be good at execution. And there's a role for academic institutions like IIM Bangalore because that is where we are able to do the right level of conceptual thinking and research. When we pull all three together, we have a very powerful way of accelerating inclusive growth and addressing a social agenda that otherwise would be very difficult to address. Intel has itself played a role in some key public-private partnerships, such as the National Digital Literacy Mission and the NOFN, which is an initiative of the government for taking the fiber network down to the last mile. And also this piece that I had talked about earlier, which is taking technology to the masses, creating technology that enables people who may be illiterate interact with digital devices through things like gesture, facial expression, voice. Those are all areas where we could partner with academic institutions to take this to the next level. And that's another area where we are in Intel putting a lot of effort. So let me wrap by summarizing my thoughts. We need to level the playing field, and the 4 ways in which we believe we can do that very effectively is by making technology available to all, by making governance a value, a commitment, by creating an environment where innovation is encouraged, and by looking at ways in which we can partner together, government, industry, and academia. And in this conference, given that we do have this very interesting and rich mix of academia, industry, and NGO organizations, it would be a great opportunity for us, in fact, to explore ways in which we can take these public-private partnerships to another level and attack and address the inequality issue that this conference is trying to do. Thank you for this opportunity.
For this very inspiring and clear message, and also for your commitment and the commitment of your company. As a little gift of recognition, I give you the global survey of business ethics that Leon Rosu and others, also Vasanthi Srinivasan and others, compiled a global survey of what's going on in business ethics and what should be done in future. So, from the research part that you mentioned. And the second little more symbolic, we had did enlightenment or enlightening at the beginning, and this is, if you look it through it, to the light, it's a stone which should give you some joy and happiness.